Florists of Reddit, what's the saddest thing you've ever had to write on those little message cards? This is more flower sadness related, but I guess it belongs here. A girl in our work received flowers to her desk on Valentine's Day and was delighted, even though they didn't look very impressive. But she told me her boyfriend had been struggling financially recently because he was starting his own business. So this meant a lot to her. About half an hour later, a girl who sat 2 desks away received a much more impressive bouquet which got a lot of attention from the other women in the office. I saw the first girl watch all this, looking so sorrowful, before taking her flowers and hiding them under her desk. We had a standing order for a weekly bouquet. This was an exclusive shop in an affluent area, and the gentleman clearly had enough money to send something showy to his beloved wife on a regular basis. What struck me was that he would personally call in a new poem with each order, and these weren't Shakespeare quotes by any means. All were summoned from the depths of his own creativity. I was tasked with painstakingly transcribing his weekly poem onto the card. They had been married for a long time, and you can imagine how these poems would have devolved into Cornville. Yet, he never missed a single one. While I was there, we all marveled at how he always took the time from running his large company to write a love-struck message to his wife every week. He never had a secretary call in the order. I was always touched to take the call from that old guy. Then one day, a woman called in with the poem. It was quite a bit different, perhaps lifted from a Hallmark card. As I filled out the order form, she explained that her father had experienced a debilitating stroke, and she would be providing the poetry from that point forward. The deliveries stopped shortly thereafter. Wow. I'm so glad that I was able to share an experience that so many enjoyed. Thank you, dear editor, for the gold. I will certainly enjoy the privileges. Well, not what was written but the bad timing of it. My brother has always been a sarcastic and funny kind of guy. He had a friend from church who was hospitalized due to some lifelong health complications. The guy has been hospitalized a lot his life and it was expected he'll be out in no time. He sent flowers basically saying, I bet you a $100 you'll come out of this fine and we can go get high and hammered with the money. The flowers arrived 2 days after he died. Not sad, so much as confusing. But when my friend started dating his boyfriend, I think they were going through a lot. He called a florist and asked her to write justice too. His boyfriend received the flowers saying justice II. No name signed. He wasn't sure if someone was after him. They've been together for years now and this summer they bought a boat. They named it Justice II. I was working for a florist and it was around Father's Day. Someone ordered flowers and I was instructed to write, "Dad, thanks for keeping the abuse physical," on the card. Only slightly on topic, but I received an amusing card with a bouquet once. My mom had been dating this guy, we'll call him Bobby, who absolutely spoiled her. I'm talking massive bouquets delivered to her office at least twice a week. By the weekend, her kitchen table would be covered in these elaborate, beautiful arrangements. I came round to visit one evening and jokingly said, "Whoa, what a spoiled little itch." The next week at work, I received a pretty little bouquet with a card that read, "Now you're a spoiled little itch. Too. Love, Bobby." I always wondered what the florist who wrote that out thought. My grandmother was a florist for many years. I used to go to the greenhouse with her all the time and watch her make these amazing flower arrangements. One day, I was visiting and she's just got done making a stunning bouquet with a small card in the center. The card read, "Eric, I'm sorry to have heard of your recent tragedy. You'll forever be missed by us all." Turns out Eric was just getting married. The arrangement was from his drinking buddies. Not a florist, but did get a lovely vase of get well flowers delivered to one of my patients as I was zipping up a body bag. I was a florist for about 5 years and though I don't specifically remember any of the card messages, my worst day was when a local 7 or 8-year-old girl passed away after she was thrown from a horse. The neighborhood she lived in was right across the street from my shop. And one day before the funeral all the little girl's friends came in with their parents to pick things out for the funeral. It was heart-wrenching with each of these little girls and boys choosing flowers and saying what they wanted on the card. I'll never forget it. Not a florist, but I once had flowers delivered to my office and the card said, I know I will never see you again, but I wanted to thank you for changing my life. I have no idea who they were from. I worked at a retirement home as a kid in the office, and we would receive any deliveries including flowers. One had a note to the effect of "Happy birthday mom" in Polish. It was the only language the woman spoke, and then below in English, "You made my life hell. I hate you. But you can't read this part." And I needed to finally say it. We looked at it for a while in the office. Finally the administrator took his scissors and cut off the bottom and said no one deserves that on their birthday. Then he delivered them to the woman himself. Not for a card message, but 2 days ago I had to do a funeral for a 2-year-old that drowned in the backyard pool when nobody was looking. I knew her uncle and I attended the viewing. I had never seen such a tiny casket. Was pink and she was tucked in it so small. I did the heart piece arrangement filled with pretty pink flowers and the family requested I put frozen dolls in it. Duckman. My mom was a floral arrangement specialist at Kroger. A young woman came in asking for lilies and rosebuds with baby's breath. My mom put it together for her and asked what she wanted on the card. The woman replied, "To Lily, the breath of your baby shall forever bloom in our hearts and yours." She told my mom her sister's daughter died of SIDS the day before, comma. The florist didn't write it. My grandfather did. Happy anniversary. I'll always love you. 5. It was delivered on their 40th anniversary. 5 months after he had passed from colon cancer. He had his son, my uncle, get the card and he wrote it a week before he passed. My uncle then saved it and sent it with the flowers my grandfather had ordered for her. We found the card again when she passed away. She had kept it stashed in one of his old cigar boxes with a stack of other love notes he'd sent her through the years, most when he was overseas in World War II. Fife was his pet name from my grandmother. I was a trainee florist when I was 17. The saddest one I had was a phone order from a gentleman who wanted a bouquet of flowers with the note "Sorry I ruined your life" to his ex-lover. Besides working for a bank for 3 years in college, I've spent my entire 28 years in the flower industry. My mom has owned a shop since I was 2. My dad owned a greenhouse, etc. It's the family business. The saddest thing I can think of. There's too much. The mother whose 6-year-old dreamed of having a fairy tale wedding. When she died of cancer, she gave her a fairy tale funeral. The families that take flowers to their infant's grave. It's between 20 years but they're still just a baby to them. Words on an enclosure card just can't describe sadness like I've seen. I've met with families to discuss funeral arrangements countless times. I've seen deceased people weekly, if not daily, since I was a little boy. These people are friends and family, members of my small community. It takes an emotional toll. I'm sure to some florists it's just business, but not to us. Edit. This definitely put a bit of a damper on my day, so I just want to say be good to each other. Life is short and there's too much good in it to spend all your time reflecting on bad memories. Celebrate life, those you spend time with, and those you've lost. Not a florist, but I met a guy in Switzerland. Every day he went out to see the girl that he loved and he would go with flowers every day. It sounded sweet. Turns out, she was the mother of his child, but left him for someone else. And he kept trying to win her back. Then, she started calling the police when he showed up. The last time I talked to him, he told me the police said they would have to throw him in jail next time he showed up to her house. I asked him what he was going to do. He said, "I'm going to bring her flowers and hope that she sees that I love her." Next day, off he went. He just couldn't wrap his mind around the fact that she didn't love him anymore. And he couldn't let it go. Maybe not sad things to write on flowers, but maybe relevant. Edit. Forgot to add. He was Dutch and was in Switzerland specifically because the girl he loved had moved there and he was going to win her back. Not necessarily sad, but weird. After my dad's funeral we were looking at the various arrangements and the cards. A rather lovely one came from my dad's old boss. Nice. Except he supposedly had died 3-4 years earlier. He went off the grid. Nobody heard from him. Eventually everyone in the business said he died. Never did see him. A man paid for flowers to be left at his wife's graveside once a month. Always wrote "I love and miss you" on it. Not the saddest thing to write, but just the idea of it. He always called to make sure we didn't forget. 2. Also, having to do the flower arrangements for a friend I was just with the night before. Imagine finding out they died because someone was ordering flowers for their parents. For a male to female transgendered patient recovering from the change surgery, congratulations on your loss. Not really sad, but I'm sure it made the florist wonder. In Finland, it's common when someone has a baby to get them a flower arrangement that consists of a large bouquet with a small bouquet tied to it with a ribbon. The idea is that cutting the ribbon is like cutting the umbilical cord. Before he moved here and we got married, my husband lived in the USA. One Valentine's Day he called up a florist near my office, ordered one of those new baby bouquets, and had them write in English something like Happy Valentine's Day, I love you. Both the florist and my coworkers were very confused when they delivered the flowers to me at work. Turns out, he had picked that bouquet because he wanted my daughter to get flowers, too. It was sweet and a little weird at the same time. Much like him. My shop used to do funerals. We had a couple come in once and they just did not seem all there. Taking the order was very difficult, but eventually we got them sorted out with a nice little spray blue arrangement for a casket and some blue and white standing arrangements. Turns out they had just lost their 4-year-old son and were actually fresh in our shop from the funeral home where they choose the casket. We got orders the rest of the week from their friends and relatives with cards like heartbroken for you and he was the sweetest boy. Having seen them as they went through, it made every card hard to write. My mom once sent me flowers with a card that said hope this isn't a nail in the coffin. Why, you might ask? Because even though my mom ordered a bouquet with no roses, the last time there were roses in the bouquet. I'm allergic to roses. Turns out the next bouquet still had roses. Both were supposed to be get well soon flowers after a series of surgeries I was having. The second time she called to complain because her order said on it no roses, but the place essentially said they did substitutions, because the bouquet she picked had like some super seasonal flower, at their discretion, and she could eat it. She did a Yelp review and they changed their tune by sending a new bouquet to me of duck-eyed roses. After that we just had to laugh. I mean, I get the roses are expensive and that's what most people want, but really? A somewhat related story, that is, a sad quote. My brother died of an extremely rare disease when he was 7 years old. I was 2 at the time. About a year or two ago I came across a memo my dad wrote for the expat community to inform people of the loss. We were living in Tanzania at the time. The part that hit me the most was, more than a life, no matter how short, is a lifetime. First off, guys, if you're using the same florist to send your wife and mistress flowers on Valentine's Day, take 2 minutes and make sure the cards are right. It's not our job to be a marriage counselor. Second, we see some crazy messages, like, to one of God's most beautiful creations, from another one of God's most beautiful creations. Mostly, the message is in the flowers, or lack thereof. Had a guy come in once, order a dozen roses for his significant other, wants to see it before being delivered, walks over and cuts all the heads off the roses leaving just the stems, greenery and baby's breath, then says, okay, now you can deliver it, she'll get the message. I had one that said, to honor your dying wish, I am putting this truth on a card for the world to see. I never loved you, and resented you in my life. Now that you are gone, I feel a certain relief. There, I said it, Mom. Our goalkeeper hung himself when he was 14. His father was one of the biggest florists with several shops all around the city. I've never seen a grave like his since. It was practically a garden. Every card read for my son, I'm sorry, and then finished with another confession. Apparently he had neglected him after his wife died and tried to keep the business running. I worked for a florist delivering flowers all through college. The saddest was a delivery of yellow roses I made to a notably attractive young lady. The card said, I hope he'll love you as much as I did, and still do. She just stood there, reading the note back to me, and then she burst into tears. It's something that made a lasting impression on me. Love and kisses on all of your pink parts. I helped a cute and quiet boy and his father make an arrangement and they had happy birthday, mommy on the card. I told the boy, I bet your mommy will love this. Give her a hug with it. 2. The boy teared up and said he didn't think he could make his hug reach heaven and he hoped she could see the flowers on her grave. Dad looked wrecked. I still feel awful. I once had to send an arrangement and card to a woman at her work. The order was placed by her and was for the 1-year anniversary of her miscarriage. She specifically requested that we not reveal the sender if anyone called in to ask. The card was intentionally left with no sender. So the woman got the arrangement she sent herself, called us to ask who it was from, and we had to tell her I'm sorry. The sender has asked to remain anonymous, even though the previous night she had called herself to order it. Absolutely heartbreaking.